I feel like Jim and I started making duo music together more just kind of, I mean, this is the way a lot of my collaborations work, but just as like an expression of friendship more than anything.
Mm.
And we were like, well, there's obviously some kind of like sympathetic thing aesthetically here and musically, and what would it be like for us to get together and play? So I think the first thing we did was like a almost totally improvised set somewhere. You
Mm.
know, we had a gig somewhere. I think we played like these kind of like minimalist two electric guitar improvisations.
Mm.
And then as a sort of scaffolding for that kind of texture,
Mm.
I brought in a couple old, you know, like Appalachian tunes to try to, you know, fragment them and kind of come in from a certain way and apply this sort of interlocking electric guitar textural improvisation world and just have a little bit of a form and harmonic framework and melodic structure to work off of, you know, like kind of like if we were playing like a standards gig or something, but just
Yeah.
to have a little bit of something to work off of and a starting point, you know, but still keep it super open-ended. And I think from there we started to, you know, it was like, oh, like playing songs together. Maybe that actually is kind of our way forward.
Yeah.
And so the first record that we made, which was a little bit of a mix of some of these traditional songs and some of our original writing, um, then kind of dovetailed into this latest record, which was decidedly leaning all the way into, you know, material that wasn't ours and rearranging some of those older songs and yeah, trying to capture them in a really stripped down kind of honest and vulnerable and immediate kind of way without so much production.
So
So that's
less
kind of
production.
how we got to here, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim?
Yeah, I distinctly remember it very similar to Matt. It was improv like minimalist improvisation stuff we would do, and I remember the first song we actually would play was we would open our sets with "Across the Universe," like we would do an
Oh
instrumental
yeah.
version of the Beatles tune "Across the Universe," and that was the first time we played anything that was actually like Matt's saying, some sort of form or something that we could play on. And then I think we were just like, yeah, it's always nice to have that, and we just started adding more tunes that we could like kind of play like that. And then yeah, I really don't, it's hilarious that I don't really remember where the decision started for me to like start singing in the band, but like we but I just know that it gradually over like 4 years or something kind of moved into that, if it was even that long, I don't know. But and yeah,
Was
and then
this,
and
were
once
you mostly playing, was this built sort of around gigs at all, or were you mostly just meeting together and
Yeah, I think it
hanging
was
out
just
and
when I
things?
first met Matt, I just knew I wanted to play with him. I just knew that he was like my new favorite guitarist in Chicago, and I was just like, I don't know whoever the hell this guy is. I got to know more,
Yeah.
and because I think we shared you probably did a Sunspeak gig with Paul's group with Unknown New, I think,
Yeah, totally. Would have
and I
been
was just
probably
like,
like
whoa,
2014 or something like
yeah, it
that.
was a while back.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I asked him if we could get together and play, and I think it just yeah, without any preparation, we were just like, let's just play, and see what happens. And it felt really good, and I was just like, I latch onto those things. The more you do this, and the more people you play with, and then don't play with anymore. When something really feels like it's clicking, I was just like, oh yeah, we got to do this more. This is awesome. So yeah, and it's really funny. It just morphed into this like folk duo thing, and I love it. But the origins are unclear, just how it all got to that point. But
Yeah.
yeah, the first record was, um, we had started writing some songs and playing. I think we'd probably done some gigs, like, and then maybe even had bass and drums on one or two of them, and
Hmm.
um, so we started, just the idea was to throw all this music we think is cool, like any, regardless of who wrote it, just together on this album and do it. And then for the next record, we were very ambitious, or at least I was. The idea was to do a double album where we would basically split the two things that are amalgamated on the record
Hmm.
to like one that's all folk and covers reimagining songs,
Hmm.
and then all originals on the other. And we were going to try
Hmm.
to release that, but as you know, that's a pie in the sky idea. And
Yeah.
so we do have the bones recorded for that original portion, the follow up to this record that will finish sometime soon,
Yeah,
I
we
imagine.
we thought to do
Oh,
something a little more concise here instead and just say like, okay, well, we have the body of work for one side of that double album. Maybe that's just its own thing. And as a sort of spiritual predecessor to that, the first record, The Year of Orbison, I feel like is kind of like navigating that a little bit. And we were kind of looking to, I don't know, hold a microscope or a magnifying glass up to each side of that approach and
what are
kind
the
of
sides that we're
well, I
talking about
guess,
again?
yeah, I would say on one side it's like finding traditional music that we're really inspired by and wanting to
Yeah,
record.
yeah.
And on the other side, like our original songwriting, where you'll hear on the Year of Orbison, it gets a little more into like drum samples and, used the Roland Juno a lot on that record in a way that like doesn't really have a home on Roll On Buddy in the same way, production
Yeah.
wise. Yeah.
And I think that's part of it too, is this I don't remember exactly, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. There wasn't like a ton of us playing live together on that first record, like maybe one or two things we did that, but most of it was just overdubbing each other's parts, like we were building the record through,
We were,
individual.
it's true. I mean, but I think the live takes of that record are the two of us playing guitars together.
Oh, it is? Okay, great.
Yeah, it is.
Good.
I
So
very proudly made that record in Jim's old apartment on a two-channel interface.
yeah,
That whole
Yeah.
record over the course of a couple of days in
yeah.
our earlier versions of the studio. So
Uh,
Yeah, but I know that for Roll On Buddy, we wanted to really lean into the two of us just playing together live with acoustic guitars. So
yeah,
we recorded. That's the way the whole record. I cut all the vocals live, and we just recorded in Shirk's main room, playing two acoustic guitars, no click, no headphones, and we just tracked everything, and then kind of went back to it, and we're like, what else does this need from
hmm,
a very minimal like
mm,
approach of like, we'll put a little bass. We weren't going to do like a million guitar overdubs or something like we have done in the past. So, and it's turned out great.
yeah. Jim really went on the hero's journey for that record. I mean, that was a one-day session. And there are no comps, there are no edits. Those are all complete vocal takes. So, I mean, it's
really?
just so
Wow.
refreshing and beautiful to
Huh,
work that way, And
huh.
within an afternoon, we've got the record cut.
I was going into the listen back room being like, if I'm 75% good on this, we can keep it. Like I was
Yeah,
like prepared to pass with a C average of
yeah,
like the vocal takes, listening back and being like, yeah, I think that's good enough where I won't be horrified when I hear it 5 years from now.
yeah. And so there's no harmony, vocal harmony on anything, is there? Is that
I
right?
don't think
No,
so. No.
no.
Yeah,
I think we really wanted to maintain the like fact that it was all live vocal and just like
yeah.
it's yeah. So that
The pedal steel. This is something you play, Matt, right? Did
Yeah.
you did you have you been able to do that for a long time, or is it like since the Orbison record you like learned how to do this, or and just
Yeah,
decided
this
to
was a
employ
this
it
was
here?
a pandemic deep dive
Ah.
of mine. Something I've been thinking about for a long time.
The pedal steel in that song uh, seemed to resonate with a kind of um, uh, aspect of Neil Young's vocal style of his sort of swoopy,
Yeah,
his sort of swoopy singing, which
totally.
isn't quite yours, Jim, but like having that there kind of like connects a little bit with him. You ready for times to get better? This is a song that's in copyright, but it also feels like a. I mean, the only recording I was able to find was by like Doc Watson and somebody. Um,
that's the one.
that's the one.
Yeah.
So that feels like it's in more of this. I mean, I don't want us to just like be like figuring out the genre, playing the genre game in terms of trying to nail things down, because that feels like it could be a bad move. I don't know, but
No, but I think what's interesting about that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but the that song was originally recorded like what in the 80s, I think.
Yeah, I
Whoever
think
wrote
he's
that
covering
for
it. It was some
because
female
Doc's
country
version is a
artist.
cover. And
Yeah.
so the original recording of that song is like an 80s
huh,
country thing that sounds exactly like you'd think the way that sounds.
huh,
And then Doc takes it obviously after the fact, but brings it into his universe, which has that timeless kind of thing that's connected to music that's much older than that. And
yeah,
so it's this weird cyclical time traveling thing that I think is so
oh,
interesting. you know.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
I hadn't found that out.
yeah.
So it's like so Doc Watson had so this it starts as a as an 80s country tune, but then
Yeah, yeah, it's a
Doc
more
moves it into
recent
this other
thing, and then
realm.
Doc covers it, and in his Doc Watson way, gives it the feeling that it was written 100 years ago instead of,
Fascinating.
40
Yeah, I
years
think he
ago.
was pretty open to like I remember just hearing a quote from him once about like, I've just been collecting songs so long and like I think about that the exact same way. Of just like you collect these songs that you hear that you can play in whatever context you want that just means something to you and it goes all into your, your war chest of songs that you have
Hmm.
and like he was like there's so many songs that I've just heard him play that he didn't record often or like he just had so many songs in his in his song bank that he was very not precious about that and I
Yeah.
think that was very inspiration for that was just like
Yeah, and you filter it through yourself, right? I mean,
right.
I think that's why, we have Roll On Buddy right next to a Billy Joel song, and
Yeah.
I think that's
We
kind
need to
of
hear more
in a
about that.
way a thesis statement of this record is that all of this stuff like hangs together, and it almost doesn't matter what its origin is if you're gonna
Right.
like find your way of interpreting it, and just the sound of Jim and I playing it together, I think really presents it as like a unified body of work.
Yeah, they all have similar, character and just the songwriting, and like even if they're written like 300 years apart, I think that's like part of what you're saying. Like, yeah, were those originals? Were those traditional? Like, if you didn't know,
You
like,
don't
or if I
know, and
didn't tell you that that was a Neil Young song, it's also kind of a deep cut Neil Young song,
right.
and one of my favorite Billy Joel songs ever written. But if you didn't know that song, you couldn't necessarily place when it was written. Like I think you would be like this could be an old traditional song, or maybe it was written in the '90s.
So Matt Uller plays on Ready for the Times to Get Better, I think. Is
Yeah.
that right?
It
And
had to be upright. Neither of us could do it.
oh, that was the reason. Why does it have to be upright? Can you say a little bit more about the feel of that tune, or what's
Just
that?
Matt and I don't get too deep into the specifics of why, but we just kind of look at each other and go, "This has got to be upright, right?" And he's just like, "Yeah, of course." And like we that's kind of part of the reason why our relationship has been so fun over the years. Is I feel like a lot of our collaborating is kind of just like, "This is right, right? This is the right thing to do," and we both just say yes. Like so that's right, Matt. I mean,
Yeah.
remember? I think we were
Yeah,
just
no,
like,
I think absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate that about you, Jim, that like you're very trusting in my instincts as well. If I'm hearing something and you're not even necessarily totally sold on it, you're like, go for it, like see it through, like try it out. We were getting into some of that stuff in the production of this record where I was like really hearing a certain specific thing, or and you're very open to like letting the idea have its day. Yeah, I think we had a placeholder electric bass there, and yeah, just wasn't quite doing the thing. So we had Matt come by. I think it was a one take
"Oh
situation.
yeah, he did it in like 20 minutes."
He did it right here behind me, and he was in and out in no time. Yeah.
Cool. What about Mary and the Soldier? That feels a little bit more developed, but maybe not.
That's
It's ballad.
Our one Irish tune.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's Irish. Yeah, okay, okay.
yeah.
Like
And
Irish dance feel. I mean, is that the or is it actually an Irish song or an Irish folk song?
yeah, I believe it's an old Irish ballad from a long time ago. I believe so. Paul Brady and Andy Irving have this record of old Irish tunes. They're both Irish musicians, and I think I read once that he was going through like the Library of Congress or something, or like the old like just like some old like government book collection of books and manuscripts and stuff, and he was like he discovered a number of songs that had kind of been lost to time and kind of revived them, and that's kind of a big part of it. Paul, I think Matt knows a lot more about Paul Brady than I do, but there was a record we were really fond of, in particular, like a cut off that record, Arthur McBride, which is like my favorite Christmas song ever written.
Greatest
About
Christmas
these,
song.
yeah, it's the greatest Christmas song ever written. It's about these two Irish scoundrels who come across English soldiers on Christmas morning, and fisticuffs ensue. But it's a great story, long form strophic song, really fun. But
Yeah.
and then Marion Soldier was also on that one, and I think those songs are were at least when when Paul Brady recorded them, pretty like under recorded and like maybe even forgotten to time. So he was kind of like resurrecting some of these things.
Yeah, I could sing the praises of Paul Brady all afternoon. Um, but I just think his guitar playing is brilliant. His voice is just out of control, beautiful. And in the case of a song like Arthur McBride, I think it touches on a lot of what we're getting at here with, he added some verses to that song, I believe, to
Mm,
kind of like update it and let it resonate with the times that he was living in, it
mm,
becomes this anti-war song. And yeah, I mean, the notion that he would change words in a traditional song and add a verse and make it feel alive in a certain way, I think is something we've tried to learn from and approach this collection of songs that come from so many different places, and getting them to sit together and say like, okay, we don't have to be so precious about this. Yes, we're going for a very like stark production angle here. We're not necessarily like treating these songs with all kinds of crazy production choices sonically, but how can we make this feel like it's ours to work with, and not feel constrained by um, just the framework of the song. With Mary and the Soldier, though, I think he keeps a very traditional. I don't think he really alters that song very much. It just feels kind of timeless in its own way.
mm.
So yeah, we really ripped that arrangement right off of him and played it down.
Mhm.
But I
With
do want to
violin too?
shout out the great Dana Lynn, friend of mine in New York City. She plays a lot of traditional Irish music, so
Ah,
she's very deep in that world, which is
yeah, yeah.
really why I thought of her to
Yep.
contribute to this. But at the same time, she's got, first of all, a really beautiful project with a guitarist named Kyle Sano, where they deconstruct a lot of Irish music and
Mm,
have this more like kind of kaleidoscopic fragmented, broken version of interpreting that music in a similar way to like the origins of Storm Jameson, where we're kind of refracting these songs. That's a really cool project that I recommend checking out. But she's a brilliant composer in her own way, and she has a band. Forget the name of it exactly, but she's made a number of records of her own original music for kind of a chamber jazz ensemble and has played in a number of more like free improvised settings and session work and pop stuff all over the map. She's a total badass. I think it's actually very appropriate that you bring that up if we look at the next track, because to me that's kind of
Ah, yes, Roll On Bud.
very very much in conversation with what I hold so dear about her records, and that starkness and that rawness and vulnerability. I mean, if you're familiar, I mean, I love every single one of her recordings so much, but there's a famous story about Time the Revelator, about that first track being like a sound check take, where it was
Yeah.
not really going down as a keeper take, and that's how the record opens. And for me, the back half of Roll On Buddy, where we really start improvising and finding our way, weaving the guitars, and Jim is clearly having a really, I mean, for both of us, it's a very emotional moment, but you hear it in Jim singing so much when we get to those later verses in that song. To
Mm.
me, that is like very much standing on the shoulders of the mountain that Gillian Welch and David Rawlings have climbed and kind of showed us the way of how to approach, yeah, like what it can be to bring that emotional quality into a recording.
Yeah, that the recording of Roll On Buddy is something that is the epitome of that vulnerability, that singing live. And I really did. That was the first take, and
Mm.
that song always makes me cry just because I connect to it personally on a lot of levels. And it's funny to like know you're recording something in the studio and be like, just don't lose it this time. Like just see if you can get through this one.
Mm.
And I really didn't. But we went back and listened to it, and I was just like, let's see if we can do something more compelling than this. And it really wasn't even close. And so
Mm.
when we were going back to decide which take to keep, I was just like, we gotta keep this one. I think just to put it
Did
out
we
there
did
because
we
it.
even do a second take,
I
Jim?
think we tried to, but
Did
I
we?
don't. I think
Okay.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean,
Yeah.
but that was my recollection. That at first I was not really prepared to put that out. Because I was like, I don't really want people to hear this.
It's
But
intense. You're living in this modern world, like everything has to be very finished and polished and
yeah,
and at the
I'm
same
I'm
time that recording, is has everything to do with why I continue to make music.
Yeah. I mean, then that's and they'll yeah. I'm really happy we ended up doing that and that we went through with it because I agree it's probably the best track on the record I think for that reason just because of how all encompassing it is of our approach and our connection personally and just like Matt brought that song in thinking of me and like that just it still to this day really touches me and it's a really important song for me so
Yeah, and there's obviously
oh,
sometimes
nine pound hammer
yeah,
too
Nine
yeah
Pound Hammer, like with these old songs, it's kind of fluid between like, are these even two separate songs or what? Things going by different names or coming, simultaneously from different parts of the world and different parts of the country. But Nine Pound Hammer is a song I've known for a long time and heard so many different versions of that. And then I do want to shout out the great musician and sort of ethnomusicologist, song collector Bruce Molsky, whose records have meant a lot to us. And he's such a just a fount of wisdom when it comes to yeah, all these different threads of folk music, in particular fiddle music, banjo music. But he's done so much work tracing fiddle music from the Appalachian Mountains to Canada to Ireland to Great Britain to Scandinavia and all the different traditions of songs that emerge from there and finding the ways that they intersect. And so I think
How
his
does he do?
recording,
Is he a recorder of these things, or is he a writer of
he's a
songs?
musician.
He's a
Yeah,
musician.
he
Okay.
performs these works and records them, but I
Yeah.
think he must just do a lot of
yeah
research,
he's
So,
seemingly like always traveling like he's basically just like a
Wow.
nomad of like fiddle
Wow.
festivals and folk music festivals all around the world where he's like going to Sweden and just like spending a week there doing like sitting around playing fiddle music with people and he just kind of seems to always be out there
Hmm.
doing the Lord's work.
Hmm.
yeah, so I think it was maybe his recording that was more on the roll on buddy side of the spectrum if 9 Pound Hammer's over here and like I don't know, that kind of triggered me to kind of find my way through it and something about his arrangement of it that made me think of Jim singing it in particular. I remember sending it to him.
Yeah.
Jim, I would love for you to talk about Time Flies. I think that's an interesting anomaly in this record and how
Yeah.
that one can
Let's
be.
do it.
Sure. Are we there already?
Well, I think maybe the subsequent tracks kind of fall into some of what we're already talking about, but that one's definitely an outlier in a
Sure.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I hurt my back really bad when I was living at home with my sister over the pandemic, and
Mm,
it's like that the house she lives in was left to all of us by my dad when he died, and but she lives there because she teaches at the high school in Cary where we grew up, and so does my brother-in-law. So when that everything happened, it just made most sense for them to kind of take over and be the caretakers of that. But so I went home. I had a home to go to when my well, I was unable to pay rent and all of the other things. So I went back to live with her and was feeling pretty guilty about kind of like encroaching on their life that was just fine without me there. And so I would be like, oh, I'll shovel the driveway, like I'll do stuff, like I'll be useful. I'll cook one meal a week, like all that stuff. But so I was out and I would shovel, and it just happened to be like the snowiest effing
Oh,
like winter, and
yeah.
it's the suburbs, so it's a big driveway. And I was just out there, and I discovered the magic of a snowblower though because a neighbor drove by
we
it.
we know
He was
about
just
this in
like,
Wisconsin. Yeah.
yeah, my neighbor drove by. And he's just like, hey man, you can borrow my snowblower anytime you want. I'm right across the street. And I was just like, oh, I think I'll take you up on that because I like hurt my back really bad. So I was down in the basement laying on my back and just like, all right, I'll binge some television because that's basically what I did for the entire year. And I just decided to like start ER from the very beginning
mm,
of the series. And there's an amazing cameo that she comes back a couple times, but Rosemary Clooney shows up in like the second episode of the series or something because she's George Clooney's like great aunt or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I think that there must have been some sort of handshake agreement that like if George Clooney was maybe cast on this show that she would make an appearance. I don't know, but I'm speculating. But it's just she made an appearance on like the second episode as this kind of like singer with dementia who's like often found wandering the streets just like singing songs, and they'll bring her into
Oh,
the
I
ER. Do
remember
you
now.
remember
I didn't
this?
know that was Rosemary Clooney. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
So it's amazing and it's really beautiful. And the episode is just very, very touching. And her voice is still just amazing.
Yeah.
But so like yeah, I believe the episode opens with like one of the doctors is like trying to sleep, to take a quick nap, and she just like bursts into the room like singing and wakes him up. But one of the songs that she sings a cappella is "Time Flies," which is this like Jimmy Webb tune from I think it's from like a musical. They adapted like Ray Bradbury's "Dandelion Wine" into a musical,
Oh,
and so this is one of those songs from that musical, and but she sings it a cappella, and so like without the context of the music underneath it, it absolutely blew me away, and I was just like, what is this song? And it, the emotional, I think, the way that it's presented had a lot to do with the effect, but so I just kind of tracked it down, and yeah, the original version is very orchestrated and kind of
yeah.
like,
That's the
it's
one I
not,
found. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's not anything like our version, but that song just was living with me for like a week or two and just in my head, and I sat down with the guitar and was just thinking kind of like almost like taking like a Jose Gonzalez approach of just this kind of minimalist like ostinato bass thing going on underneath it, and trying to find a way to really simplify the harmony so that the melody still works over it, and came up with that arrangement. And yeah, that was supposed to kind of be like the springboard at the end of our record into the next one, which will be more, like that one, since that one's so different from the other tracks on Roll On Buddy.
I'm interested in the like what folk traditions are, what what folk music is, and what it is to be an individual artist who's trying to both innovate and find a language um, that's resonant with yourself personally, um, and how and what it means to be true to these different sorts of things. Like, so if there's a folk tradition, then there's something maybe to be true to, and maybe one of the ways that it radiates power is that people are connecting with something that goes back through generations, or it has historical backdrop to it. But that it seems like that could also be a trap if you feel it in the wrong way, right? If you feel it like, oh well, I don't want to violate this tradition, or I don't, or I'm an imposter. It's like I don't have a deep enough connection to this to express myself within it. Um, but I guess on the other side is you're always trying to be true to yourself as a
Yeah.
musician, as an artist, um, which is its which is its own sort of separate project. I guess you want these things to come together, but I mean, on the other hand, I mean, you guys talking about how Doc Watson, kind of vacuumed up songs from wherever, and
Yeah.
presumably the test with
Yeah.
him is if he could make it feel good in his musical language and world, then that's the
Yeah.
only test, right?
Yeah.
I can say personally for me, that's really what it is, especially as it went on for a couple of years, because like I came to this music very similar, like this style of folk music and stuff through kind of these different channels that all border on it, and like Union Station's pretty in there, but like just all this music I was gravitating toward that I really loved, but as the years have gone on, I worry much less about like being really stylistically like on the nose, or like really being like good enough to play bluegrass and stuff like that. Just like it matters so much less to me as time has gone on. Like I'm never going to be like a Tony Rice like chicken picker. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that as well as those guys. So like being innovative and really any of that stuff has really been the least of my concerns, and more just about being true to myself, and like how these songs are really felt, and I think that is what we're really trying to get to is not so much, yeah, we're killing this stylistically, or like, yeah, this is really true to the rich tradition of American folk music, and more just about these songs came from a certain place, and they're really felt by me when I'm singing them, and really felt by Matt when we're playing them together, and that was really the main motivation, is just to like do what we do with them, and not really be concerned about anything else, and I think that's really freeing because it is, I mean, coming from jazz in particular, something that I was trained in but do not really do as much anymore. for very many reasons, but just a knife I like to keep sharp, but is maybe not as sharp as it once was. Um, just that imposter syndrome thing, like it'll eat you alive, and it's particularly for me. So that it would really ruin the joy of it. Can, I mean, it always creeps that those thoughts will always creep up, but like I don't want that to ruin the joy of just these beautiful songs and how much they mean to me and how much they're felt. And so I think that we were really just trying to service the songs more than anything else, just present them in the way that we thought made the most sense and was from us. And whether we're kind of directly stealing an arrangement is, it's more not about stealing, it's about this is so good it can't really be improved upon. So we were just kind of trying to do that.
Mm,
That's how I feel, at least.
mm,
Yeah. Man, it's tough. It's a really big question. I think it's super, super interesting, like the burdens of traditions. It's a tall, tall shadow in a way, because it's so massively beautiful to look in the eye, whether it's
mm,
a folk music tradition or like Jim's talking about, like the canon of great jazz music over the last 100 years is like an immensely powerful, deep thing to look in the eye.
mm.
And in order to feel true and honest and intuitive within that, you really have to internalize a lot of things to feel like you can kind of surf the top of that wave and feel like you're in conversation with it in a really fluid, intuitive way, which is the headspace of like making honest music, I think, is like a very uncritical brain kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
place.
Yep.
And so it takes quite a lot of navigation and a lot of years of growth and challenging yourself and living with that tension of like mining the depths of the archives and the records and being part of a community and having experiences of questioning what you're doing and being shown the way by someone else who knows more than you or anything like
Yeah,
that nurtures your path towards finding out how you kind of find yourself within this tradition.
yeah,
And at the same time, at a certain point, you need to sit down and make the music. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a really big thing. And but I think what you're talking about, like being true in the music and being honest with yourself, that's what it is.
yeah,
And I think the more I learn about the more I participate in music and emulate things and learn more music and have more experiences, the more I'm trying to get back to a place of feeling like I did when it was all brand new and I
mm,
didn't know anything, and I'm kind of
mm,
hearing it as this
mm,
wall of magic that's coming off. So it's a weird like circular kind of thing
mm.
where I think we have to like do that work and immerse ourselves. And it's kind of, like if you've ever learned a foreign language or something, at the beginning, it's really just fun and whimsical because, oh, I know this tiny bit and I can use it now. And then you start to get to be like, okay, am I someone who's really trying to do this now? Like
Yeah,
now I feel
yeah,
like I know even less than I did before because I can see what's in front of me.
yeah.
So it's kind of a wild thing. But I think always when it's time to play, when it's time to record, you just gotta embrace who you are and what feels real to you and grab the parts of these traditions that feel meaningful to you and be yourself. And none of us are ever going to hear every piece of music that's ever been made.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And I think these traditions also kind of graft pieces that are meaningful, like what you're talking about with a lyric that becomes a title that becomes this and that, and these forms change and the songs change and someone adds a verse. Like it's all very malleable at the same time. And so you find what's useful to you that's going to spurn your creative energy. And sometimes for me, that's going back and really immersing myself in someone else's body of work or older songs. And sometimes that's totally wiping the slate clean and trying to find some new way of putting musical materials together. I feel like as a band and also just in my own creative practice, I'm just oscillating back and forth between those energies, going
yeah,
back, learning something from something that's already happened, and then
yeah.
also totally disregarding that.
Um, yeah, I'm extremely grateful for this. I look forward to writing about it more and listening more to the record and seeing you guys around.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for
so
taking the
much, Paul.
time, Paul. Thanks for being interested in it and putting your ears on it. I'll see you downtown tonight.
Yeah. See you then. All
Yeah,
right. Later.
right
Bye.
on. Cool. Peace.